There's a specific kind of light in a college town just before the dawn of a summer morning. It's a quiet, violet-hued glow that promises a new day, painting the empty streets and silent brick buildings with a soft, ethereal brush. It's a light of infinite possibility, the peaceful interlude between a night of youthful exuberance and the responsibilities of morning. In the early hours of June 3, 2011, this light began to creep over Bloomington, Indiana, home of Indiana University. It was the light that should have guided 20-year-old Lauren Spirer home. She was a spark of a person, a petite, vibrant fashion merchandising student from Scarsdale, New York, with a cascade of blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could disarm a stranger in a heartbeat. Her world was one of textures and colors, of dreams of the fashion industry, of a tight-knit circle of friends and a long-term boyfriend she'd known since summer camp. Life was a sprawling, sunlit campus, a future as bright and promising as the Midwest summer that was just beginning to unfold. But Lauren Spirer would never see the sunrise on that June morning. The path back to her apartment, a walk of just a few hundred yards, a journey she had made countless times, became the final, terrifying chapter of her known existence. She would walk into that pre-dawn stillness, leaving behind a handful of conflicting witness accounts and a grainy security camera photo, and vanish as if she had been erased from the world. The quiet streets that should have led her to safety instead led to a mystery that has tormented her family, baffled investigators, and haunted a community for over a decade. This is the story of a 500-yard walk, a journey into a void of unanswered questions, and the search for a young woman who disappeared in plain sight. If you want to hear more true crime stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. To understand the void Lauren Spirer left behind, you must first understand the vibrant world she inhabited. Lauren wasn't just a face on a missing person poster. She was a whirlwind of creative energy and fierce loyalty. Growing up in the affluent suburbs of Scarsdale, New York, she was the cherished daughter of Charlene and Robert Spirer, a young woman who balanced a keen sense of style with a deep connection to her Jewish heritage and a love for her family. At Indiana University, she was finding her footing, channeling her passion for fashion into a textiles merchandising major. Her apartment in the modern, bustling Smallwood Plaza complex was a reflection of her personality, girly but edgy. A large tapestry of the Hindu deity Ganesha, a symbol of wisdom and success, dominated one wall, surrounded by Buddha sculptures and bowls of candy she kept for visiting friends. Her room was a controlled chaos of clothes, the evidence of a creative mind that saw outfits and possibilities everywhere. She was notoriously messy but impeccably put together, a bundle of charming contradictions. She was the friend you called for a late-night coffee or a spontaneous shopping trip to Urban Outfitters, the one who would grab things off the rack for you, confident in her eye for what worked. She was petite, just 4 feet 11 inches tall and under 100 pounds, but her presence was immense, her enthusiasm infectious. She was fiercely independent, yet deeply connected to her circle of friends, many of whom she'd known for years from summer camp, creating a slice of home in the heart of the Midwest. And at the center of that circle was Jesse Wolfe, her boyfriend. Theirs was a relationship forged in the innocent crucible of summer camp, a deep, long-standing bond that had followed them to college. But like many college romances, it was facing the complexities of growing up. Jesse was talking about the future, about commitment, while Lauren, ever vibrant and wanting to experience everything, was feeling the first pangs of wanting to forge her own path, to be her own person before becoming part of a pair. This was the world Lauren Spirer had built for herself, a life rich with friendship, love, and the boundless promise of youth. It was a world of light and color, a world utterly unprepared for the encroaching darkness. On the night of June 2, 2011, the end of the semester was in the air, a palpable electricity of celebration and release. For Lauren and her friends, it was just another night to be young and alive, but a series of seemingly small choices, of casual encounters and altered plans, was about to set in motion a chain of events that would lead to an unthinkable, irreversible tragedy. The world she knew, the life she loved, was just hours away from becoming a memory, a lost world that investigators and loved ones would desperately try to piece back together. In the silent, agonizing years to come, the The night of June 2nd began with the familiar buzz of a summer evening in a college town. The air was warm, thick with the scent of cut grass, and the distant thrum of music from downtown bars. For Lauren Spirer, the night was an open invitation. She met up with a friend, David Ron, and they headed over to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment. Rosenbaum was part of her extended summer camp circle, a familiar face in her Bloomington social life. His apartment was in the 5 North Townhomes complex, a modern but anonymous block of buildings that would soon become a central and controversial landmark in the investigation. At Rosenbaum's, the group grew. Corey Rossman, Rosenbaum's neighbor and friend, joined them. The atmosphere was typical for the end of a school year. Alcohol flowed freely. Conversations were loud and easy, and the night felt endless. Rossman, described as bold and brash, was a newer acquaintance for Lauren, a different energy from her steady boyfriend. Jesse, there was a flirtatious spark, an undercurrent of newfound freedom as she navigated her feelings about her relationship. After some time at the apartment, the energy of the group propelled them downtown, towards the magnetic pull of the bar scene. Their destination was Kilroy's Sports Bar, a sprawling, multi-level institution on North Walnut Street, legendary among you students. Entering Kilroy's on a Thursday night was like stepping into a sensory overload. The air was a humid mix of spilled beer, perfume, and sweat. Bass-heavy music pulsed from oversized speakers, vibrating through the floorboards and making conversation a matter of shouting into someone's ear. Neon signs cast a garish, colorful glow on the faces of hundreds of students, a sea of youth celebrating the end of another semester. The bar's famous sand-covered patio was a chaotic, buzzing oasis where Lauren, at some point in the night, kicked off her shoes, leaving them behind in the gritty sand, a small, seemingly insignificant act that would later become a haunting detail. Inside the bar, the night began to blur. According to witness statements, the drinking was heavy. Lauren, so small in stature, was visibly intoxicated, stumbling, her friends helping to keep her steady. At approximately 2:27 a.m., security cameras captured Lauren exiting Kilroy's. She was not alone. Corey Rossman was with her. They left behind the cacophony of the bar, Lauren's shoes, and, crucially, her cell phone. The first leg of her journey home had begun, a short walk from the loud, bright world of Kilroy's to her own apartment building, Smallwood Plaza. But the sanctuary of her apartment, with its Ganesha tapestry and bowls of candy, was a destination she would never reach. The two of them arrived at Smallwood, but what happened next in the sterile, brightly lit hallway outside the 5th-floor elevators would be a pivotal and violent turning point in the night. Another group of students, concerned by Lauren's extreme intoxication, confronted Rossman, questioning why he wasn't doing more to care for her. An argument erupted, and one of the students, Zach Oakes, punched Corey Rossman. The punch sent Rossman reeling, and in the ensuing confusion, the plan to get Lauren safely to her door dissolved. Instead of going into her apartment, which was just steps away, Lauren and a now injured Corey Rossman turned around and left the building. The logic of that moment has been debated endlessly. Why turn away from safety? Why walk back out into the night? The only two people who knew the answer were now stumbling back onto the street, leaving the relative security of Smallwood Plaza behind and heading back towards the 5 North Townhomes. The night had taken a dangerous turn. Lauren was shoeless, phoneless, and in the company of someone who was both intoxicated and injured. The familiar path between friends' apartments was becoming a treacherous and uncertain landscape, and the final, critical hour of Lauren Spirer's timeline was just beginning to tick away. The journey from Smallwood Plaza back to the 5 North Townhomes was a descent into a deeper state of chaos and confusion. Surveillance cameras captured fleeting glimpses of the pair. At 2:51 a.m., a camera positioned on an adjacent building showed Lauren and Corey Rossman emerging from a dimly lit alley that runs between College Avenue and Morton Street. It's a narrow, utilitarian space, flanked by the featureless back walls of buildings, a place of dumpsters and shadows. The footage showed Lauren stumbling, her balance precarious. They arrived at Rossman's apartment, a place she had left just a few hours earlier in a state of celebratory excitement. Now, she was returning under a cloud of intoxication and distress. Inside the apartment was Rossman's roommate, Michael Beth. What he witnessed was alarming. Rossman, still bleeding from the punch he had received, was in no condition to care for himself. let alone anyone else. He stumbled up the stairs and vomited on the carpet before collapsing into his bed. Lauren was now alone with Michael Beth, and by his account, she was in a perilous state. He would later tell investigators that he pleaded with her to stay, to just sleep on the couch and wait for morning. He recognized the danger she was in, the vulnerability of her condition. But Lauren was insistent. She wanted to go home. Her own bed, her own space was a magnetic pull, a singular focus in her disoriented mind. Respecting her wishes, or perhaps not knowing what else to do, Beth made a decision that would be scrutinized for years to come. He didn't walk her the full distance back to Smallwood. Instead, he walked her next door, to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment. It was now well after 3:30 a.m. The pre-dawn quiet was settling over Bloomington. Inside Rosenbaum's apartment, Lauren's state continued to cause alarm. According to Rosenbaum's account to police, he noticed she had a black eye, something that hadn't been there earlier in the evening. He, too, tried to persuade her to stay. He made a call to David Ron, the friend she had started the night with, but there was no answer. He tried another friend, with the same result. Lauren, however, remained determined to leave. The final, and most critical, piece of the timeline rests solely on the testimony of the last person to admit seeing her. At approximately 4:30 a.m., Jay Rosenbaum says he stood on his porch and watched as Lauren Spirer began to walk south on College Avenue, heading in the direction of her apartment. She was barefoot, wearing black leggings and a white top, alone in the blue-gray twilight of the approaching dawn. He watched her turn the corner at 11th Street and College Avenue, and then she was gone. That corner is the edge of the map, the point where the trail of verifiable sightings and electronic footprints goes cold. From that intersection to her apartment building is a walk of no more than 3 minutes, a distance of a few hundred yards. But in that short space, in that narrow window of time, Lauren Spirer disappeared from the face of the earth. She left behind no physical evidence, no witnesses to a struggle, no trace of her path. It was as if the quiet, empty street had simply opened up and swallowed her whole. The sun rose that morning on a city that was still sleeping, unaware that one of its own had vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that would soon become a deafening roar of fear and confusion. The first few hours of a missing person case are the most critical. It's a frantic race against a rapidly diminishing clock, a desperate effort to find a trail before it goes cold. But for Lauren Spirer, that clock had a devastatingly slow start. She was last seen at 4:30 a.m. on Friday, but the alarm wasn't officially raised until later that day. Her boyfriend, Jesse Wolfe, tried to reach her via text message that morning. When he received no reply, he chalked it up to a late night out. But as the hours stretched on and his calls went to her voicemail, a knot of unease began to tighten in his stomach. He reported her missing to the Bloomington Police Department that afternoon. The initial response was tempered by the realities of a college town. Students often stayed out, their plans fluid and unpredictable. But as the full picture of Thursday night came into focus, the extreme intoxication, the abandoned shoes and phone, the altercation, the seriousness of the situation became terrifyingly clear. By Saturday morning, what had been a single missing person report had exploded into a massive, desperate search. The Bloomington Police Department, joined by state and federal agencies, launched a full-scale investigation. Her parents, Robert and Charlene Spirer, arrived from New York, their faces etched with a fear that would soon become their constant companion. They transformed a hotel room into a command center, a nerve center of hope and raw determination. The city of Bloomington was galvanized into action. A wave of humanity, thousands of volunteers, students, locals, people who had never met Lauren but were shaken by her story, descended on the search headquarters. They were a civilian army, armed with flyers bearing Lauren's smiling face, fanning out across the city and into the surrounding countryside. They scoured parks, back alleys, and abandoned buildings. They trudged through the dense Indiana woodlands, their calls of Lauren echoing through the trees. The physical search was just one front in the war against the unknown. Detectives began the grueling process of piecing together her last known movements. They pulled security footage from every possible camera, hoping for a grainy image that would extend the timeline. They interviewed and re-interviewed the key players from that night, Corey Rossman, Jay Rosenbaum, Michael Beth, and others, but they were met with a frustrating and confounding wall of silence. The young men who were with Lauren in her final hours quickly retained lawyers, their communication with police becoming filtered and formal. Their initial accounts were inconsistent, their memories hazy, a fog of alcohol and, potentially, drugs obscuring the truth. The investigation became a frustrating exercise in navigating legal barriers and conflicting stories. Leads were pursued with feverish intensity, only to evaporate into dead ends. A white truck seen in the area was tracked down, its driver cleared. Tips poured in, thousands of them, each one a potential key to the mystery, but none of them turned the lock. Investigators conducted a painstaking, 10-day search of a local landfill, sifting through 4,100 tons of garbage in the sweltering summer heat. A grim and ultimately fruitless task. The city that had been Lauren's adopted home was now a landscape of suspicion and fear. The faces on the flyers, tacked to every telephone pole and shop window, became a constant, heartbreaking reminder of the girl who had vanished. For Robert and Charlene Spirer, the days bled into a sleepless, agonizing blur. They held daily press conferences, their raw, unvarnished grief on display for the world, pleading for information, begging for their daughter's safe return. Their pain was a palpable force, a testament to a parent's worst nightmare made real. But as the days turned into weeks, the hope that had fueled the initial frantic search began to give way to a grim and terrifying reality. The search for Lauren Spirer was no longer a rescue mission. It was a recovery operation, and even that seemed an impossible task. The trail had gone cold, the silence from those who last saw her was deafening, and the mystery of what happened in those few hundred yards had become a dark, impenetrable enigma. In the vacuum left by a lack of concrete evidence, theories multiply like weeds, each one an attempt to impose order on a chaotic and terrifying reality. For the disappearance of Lauren Spirer, the theories are as varied as they are chilling, and they all point back to the critical, unaccounted for minutes of her final walk. The most prevalent theory, the one that has been the focus of the investigation from the beginning, is that one or more of the young men she was with that night are responsible for her disappearance. The inconsistencies in their stories, their immediate retention of lawyers, and their general lack of public cooperation have fueled suspicion for over a decade. Did Lauren suffer an accidental overdose or a medical emergency, perhaps related to her known heart condition, long QT syndrome, while at the 5 North townhomes? In a state of panic, did the young men make the horrific decision to dispose of her body rather than call for help, fearing the legal repercussions of the underage drinking and potential drug use that night? The scenario would explain the sudden, complete vanishing and the lack of any evidence of a struggle on the street. It paints a picture not necessarily of premeditated murder, but of a catastrophic series of bad decisions made by scared, intoxicated young men. Another theory suggests a more violent, opportunistic crime. Did Lauren, in her incredibly vulnerable state, barefoot, phoneless, disoriented, encounter a predator on her walk home? Was she abducted from the street in that short 500-yard stretch? Investigators explored this possibility extensively. They looked at known sex offenders in the area and investigated tips about suspicious vehicles. A white truck seen on security footage became an early focus, though the driver was eventually located and cleared. The problem with this theory is the complete lack of physical evidence. There were no screams heard, no signs of a struggle on the sidewalk, no eyewitnesses on a street that, while quiet, was in the heart of a densely populated student area. For someone to abduct a person, even one as small as Lauren, without leaving a single trace, would require a chilling combination of luck and criminal sophistication. Over the years, other names and possibilities have surfaced. Investigators looked into a potential link to Israel Keys, the infamous serial killer who was active during that time and known to travel, but no connection was ever established. The case of another Indiana University student, Hannah Wilson, who was murdered in 2015, also brought Lauren's case back into the spotlight, with some wondering if the perpetrator could be responsible for both. However, law enforcement has never officially linked the two cases. The theories continue to be debated in online forums and true crime communities, a grim collection of what-ifs and could-have-beens. But they all remain just that, theories. Without a body, without a crime scene, without a confession. There is no way to separate the plausible from the purely speculative. The truth of what happened to Lauren Spirer is locked away, either in the mind of a killer or buried beneath a decade-long pact of silence. For her family, this landscape of speculation is a particular kind of torture. They are left to sift through the horrifying possibilities, unable to find the solid ground of truth, forever trapped in the ambiguity of that final, fateful walk. The passage of time does not heal all wounds. For some, it is merely an abrasive, a constant wearing away at a scar that can never fade. For Charlene and Robert Spirer, the years since their daughter's disappearance have been a relentless lesson in this truth. Their lives are now irrevocably cleaved into two distinct parts: the vibrant, colorful world before June 3, 2011, and the stark, gray landscape of the aftermath. They have become Lauren's voice, her advocates, her memory keepers. For years, they maintained a near-constant presence in Bloomington, a painful pilgrimage to the city that stole their child. They left their home in New York to oversee the search, to keep the pressure on law enforcement, to ensure that Lauren's name and face were never far from the public consciousness. Their daily press conferences in the early weeks of the investigation were a raw and unfiltered look at a parent's agony. They pleaded, they reasoned, and sometimes they raged against the wall of silence erected by the very people who should have been helping them. Their frustration with the young men who were with Lauren in her final hours became a palpable, public crusade. They called them out by name, begging their parents to compel them to submit to polygraphs, to tell the police everything they knew without the filter of a lawyer. But their pleas were met with legal maneuvers and a stoic, unyielding silence. This fight for answers has defined their existence. They have navigated the labyrinth of the legal system, filing civil suits in an attempt to force depositions and uncover truths that the criminal investigation could not. They have worked tirelessly with private investigators, chasing down leads long after the official search efforts scaled back. They have harnessed the power of social media, using their official Lauren Spirer updates from her family Facebook page as a beacon, a place to share memories, provide updates, and galvanize a community of supporters who refuse to let Lauren be forgotten. Each year, on the anniversary of her disappearance, Charlene posts a letter to her daughter. They are beautiful and heartbreaking documents of a mother's unending love and a grief that does not diminish. They are a testament to a life lived in a state of suspended animation, forever waiting for a phone call that may never come. They have had to endure the false hopes and cruel hoaxes that are an inevitable part of high-profile cases, reports of remains found, of confessions that lead nowhere. Each one is a fresh stab to an open wound. They have learned to live in a world without answers, without closure, without justice. But they have never learned to live without Lauren. Her presence is a constant echo in their lives, a phantom limb of loss that aches with every passing day. They are no longer just parents. They are guardians of a legacy, warriors in a fight for a truth that remains just out of reach, forever walking their own painful road, searching for the end of a path that began with a 500-yard walk into the darkness.